Happy Sunday, Sunday, folks. Thanks for joining us. All the scoops are here this evening. This topic that we're going to talk about today is loss. Just forewarning, possible trigger warning for those who may have lost children, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, friends. So we ask you to join us in this conversation. Leave us some comments and just tell us how this has resonated with you today. We're talking about kind of two specific losses today. 30 years ago today, I had a son named Joseph. This is his birthday. So we are filming this February 8th. I had him 30 years ago. And this is also the day that I lost him. And so some of the ladies here know the story, but honestly, I don't think I've shared a lot of my story about this particular story with you ladies. So I'm going to share that with you today. And Lena and Paula have also experienced a loss on this day 3 years ago. And so they'll be talking about those losses as well, and that loss, and Aaron, Savvy, Minu, of course, we've all experienced loss. So that's what we're talking about today. How do you ladies want to get this started? Do you want me to just talk, or?
We all want to know more about Joseph, and that's a big part of your life, and I'm sure defined a lot of your growth. So we'd love for you to share.
Absolutely. I had Joseph. I got pregnant with Joseph when I was 16, and I had him when I was 17. And I went in for a routine appointment. I think it probably December, November of 95. And they're like, "Are you feeling a move?" And I was like, "No, I don't feel a move." And they got alarmed. And so I'm running through this hospital trying to get an ultrasound, and I had very little amniotic fluid, just pockets of amniotic fluid. And I actually had this problem with all of my children. So I've given birth to 3 children. But Joseph, it was very significant. I didn't have enough amniotic fluid, so he had nothing to move around in. So that's why I wasn't feeling him. So they admitted me in the hospital, and I was there so this had to be in November. I was there for 4 months. His due date was April 10th, but I had him February 8th. I was getting steroid shots every week. I was on the ultrasound machine every day. I fell in love with Days of Our Lives, by the way. I was so friendly with the nurses. I remember them coming in on New Year's and be like, "Do you have a hairspray?" And they're getting ready for parties before their shift is over, and I'm 17 years old, and the nurses were just a few years older than me, right? And they'd come in, and I built relationships with the nurses. I had been there so long. I wasn't allowed to walk. I wasn't allowed to leave the hospital. Matter of fact, I did check myself out one day and I had to sign a release. Like, I just needed to get out of the hospital because they were afraid that more amniotic fluid would leak out. And I think it's called oligohydramnios. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And so I never felt any amniotic fluid leaking. It was my first pregnancy. I had no idea. I didn't lose my plug. None of that stuff happened. So anyway, I was in the hospital for that amount of time. And then when it was time, they're like, "Look, there's nothing else we can do. We've given you steroids. We've let you rest." I think now there's probably better treatment for that, but 30 years ago, not so much. So when it came time for me to give birth to him, my mom and my dad and my nana and tata, which are my grandparents, they came for a scheduled C-section because a vaginal birth would have been too traumatic for him. And my mom was in the operating room with me, and today's actually been quite difficult because I've been thinking about my mom today. My mom was such a trooper. And as a mother now to a daughter, what my mom was going through, seeing her daughter in such pain, now resonates with me different. And she's not here anymore. So today's been hard thinking of her. I think I was telling Lena today that when you go in the operating room, you have a mask, right? Everybody wears a mask. And when Joseph was born, she had this biggest smile, like her mask stretched out. She just lit up. And keep in mind, at the time, my mother was Catholic, came from a Catholic family, and you weren't allowed to have children out of wedlock. You weren't allowed to have sex. And she saw past all of that stuff. My grandparents did too. They saw past all that stuff and were supportive to me. Anyway, so I heard Joseph cry once, and that was it. Then they took him off to the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. And then I went into recovery because, like I said, I had a C-section. And then it was my mom who told me he wasn't going to make it. And I found out later that my mom and dad had a discussion about who was going to tell me. And she was like, "I'm going to tell her." So my mother just rocked with me to have to tell your daughter that your child is not going to survive. She was amazing. She was amazing, Mom. And so I went to my room. We cried. She hugged me. I went to my room, and the doctor came in and said, his oxygen level was at 7. It was so low. they said, he's not going to make it through the night, so we can bring him to you or he'll pass away by himself. So I said, well, bring him to me. And so I held him until he passed away. And the nurses told me, talk to him, because the last thing that goes is his hearing. My mom ever so gently dressed him in a beautiful gown. She was so gentle as she was dressing him, and just handed him to me. And I asked everybody to leave the room, and I talked to him for a while. And then I don't feel like I got enough time with him. I can't believe this is hitting me so hard today. Like, it's 30 years later. I don't know why I'm crying like this. I've never really sat and told the whole story. I don't know if any of you guys have heard this whole story, but when I was pregnant with him, I used to play this song, and every time I hear it, I think of Joseph because he really liked it. It's called Shining Star by the Manhattans. Do you know that song? Here, I'll see if you guys, do you know this song? Can you hear it? Okay. So every time that song played, he would kick me. It's like he really liked that song because I had remember those old school CDs, guys? The Lowrider CDs? That song was on that CD, and he loved that song, and he would kick me to that song. So now every time I hear that song, I think of it. Yeah, so that's the story. I wasn't even allowed to sit up to hold him because when I had my epidural, I leaked spinal fluid, which was the most painful thing I've ever experienced. I felt like my head was in a vice. And so I had to stay laying flat. And so, yeah, and then once his heart stopped beating, they took him. So it was really hard. They asked me if I wanted to do an autopsy, and I think they did. I don't know. I would have, given the choice now, I never would have done it. There's no reason for you to do that to my baby. So I regret that. And then I went home back to Colorado and lived my life. Nobody really talked much about him. My dad did. Remember, he told me he wrote a song or played a piano or some song for him. And I do remember a family member opened his autopsy report, and I was really, really pissed off. And I was like, why would you do that? And I was told, well, we just want to be prepared for you, I guess. And I felt like all I have left as a mother is to protect him and his dignity. Like, you had no right to read about my son. Let me claim something because he's not here. So he's mine. Everything about him is mine. And I just didn't like people making decisions without discussing me. Like, I'm still his mother, even though he's not here. So I was really, really upset with that. I felt like that was a violation of me as his mother to read stuff about him before I got to. And maybe I never wanted to share it, but I understand that perhaps they wanted to protect me, but I was going to read it anyway. And so, yeah, that's the story of Joseph.
Thank
I
you
am
for
a
sharing
real
that,
ugly
Shannon.
crier, guys. I'm really sorry.
You're a beautiful crier, and thank you for sharing your story. Can you tell
Yeah.
us where he is now? That's a fancy crystal glass you got there,
This is
Scoopalicious.
my mom's from her crystal, so I thought it fitting that I would drink from her glass this evening. He's in Beulah State Park. I released his ashes. You know, I will say that the medical care for him was extremely expensive, and my dad took care of everything. He took care of the cremation. He took care of everything. Like, I was so young, I didn't know. When I came back to work, and, keep in mind, I hadn't been on my feet for like 4 or 5 months. So I started working immediately, and my feet were burning because my body wasn't used to walking. So many reminders of what had just transpired. I was thrown back into life, and geez, maybe I never processed it. I don't know. I was 17. So
I'm so glad
yeah.
we're talking about this today, because I'm sure anybody who's been watching our podcast sees you as a pretty strong woman.
Mhm.
You come across, I think you put up a little bit of front maybe. And to see you being this vulnerable, we're seeing a different side to you, Shannon. And I think you're right. And maybe you haven't given yourself the opportunity to feel the things that happened that day. I mean, like you said, you were so young. And I mean, how can you ever be prepared for a loss that size, let alone when you're barely 17 years old? And sometimes, I think you kind of alluded to this. People just want you to brush that stuff aside. It's over. It's done. Move ahead. So maybe you weren't fully given the opportunity to love him fully, to cherish the few moments that you had with him, and to grieve. You carried a human life for 7 months and brought him to the world, and with, I'm sure, hopes and dreams for what life was going to be like, to love your child and imagine him growing up and doing all the things that we as mothers imagine. And, that was cut out for you, and maybe you weren't given the right, or maybe you didn't allow yourself, maybe because you were only 17. What did you know about grief and how to process that? I think going through that is a skill, to go through all those stages. And of course, you mentioned too the loss of your mom, which was a couple of years ago, and to be talking about, a pretty momentous anniversary, 30 years.
Yeah, it's crazy to imagine that I would have had a 30-year-old, at this time. And I was listening to our podcast. I like to listen to our podcast usually when they go live so I can kind of enjoy it with the audience. And Lena had mentioned that we think of ourselves like 9 to 12 or 7 to 12 years younger. And I look at myself and I'm like, you don't have kids who are almost 30. You're not looking like you're about to push 50. I don't feel that way. Some days I do when my knees sound like potato chips. But I really have a more of a youthful mindset. And so when I think of Joseph and what I went through 30 years ago, like, it was, I felt very alone. I felt very alone. I didn't have any friends. The father of Joseph, I had left him, I had broken up with him, and actually, I think he was there. Yeah, he was there, but I wanted my mom in the operating room with me, in the birth room with me, not him. And I kind of feel, thinking about that now, like, did I rob him of that experience to see his son born? But I was a little girl. I need my mom. Like, maybe if I was an adult woman, I would think of it differently, but I was scared. And then afterwards, going through that healing process and not leaving with your child was so hard. It was so hard. I remember my 2-week checkup. I went to the doctor, and the lady at the counter, she was like, "So how's your baby?" Well, he didn't make it. And she probably felt terrible. That's what you ask new moms when they're there for their 2-week checkup. How's your baby? Is everything going okay? And mom left, and dad left, and Nana and Tata left. I was living with my boyfriend and his family at the time, not Joseph's dad, and nobody understood. I had him in California. Everybody was in Colorado or Arizona, and everybody left. So it was not ideal. I wish somebody stayed. And then when I had my next son, when I had QL, I was so scared. I was so scared. They had to warm my body up. They couldn't even get a vein because my body was so cold. I was going into shock. I was scared I was going to lose him. And I told his dad, I said, don't leave him, because they had to rush him out too. He went straight to the NICU, had a C-section. I got to see him really quick, and they took him away, and I told Clee, stay with him. And he did. He stayed with him the whole time. I was very, very scared.
I wish I was there to hug you. It is such an intense topic to even discuss. And thank you so much for sharing it here. And we all are here for you. It's such a tender thing to. So, Shannon, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you pick today's day, other than the fact that you had him 30 years ago? You processed this strong emotion after 30. What was your why? That's
just
fun.
This Sunday Sundae podcast happened to fall on his birthday, and so that's why. And I know that parents they've lost their children, and I cannot imagine what it would have been like to know Joseph's favorite color, to hear his voice, to know what his favorite outfit was, and then lose him. And there are parents out there that have. They've watched their children grow up and they lose them. And our children are not supposed to go before us, right? I know that there are women who dealt with loss and men who dealt with loss of their children. It's just not us. And so why not talk about it now, since it's his birthday? And, I will say that some birthdays are good. I still cry on his birthdays. It's not like, this has been a little bit more intense because I was really thinking about my mom and how supportive she was. And I do remember my grandmother telling me, though, we had some family event. She told me not to talk about him. She said, she just said, don't talk about him. And I think my dad probably saw my pain. He had noticed an interaction between another family member and I, and this particular woman was not very nice to me. And she told me, she goes, I wish I was like you. And I thought she was going to say, strong. I was 17. This was probably 2 months after Joseph had passed away. And we were visiting. She goes, I thought she was going to be like strong or resilient, whatever. I was very quiet on that visit. And she goes, you just think you know everything, don't you? And I looked at her like, I've barely said a word. I haven't said anything to you. And I think my dad picked up on that interaction. She wasn't very nice to me because a part of me kind of recoiled. So, but then another, a few months later, I kind of came out of my shell and I didn't know how to deal with the grief.
And Shannon, what would you say to another mother who has walked or is walking this path that you did?
I wouldn't even know, because if I put up the age and I think about, I'll say it like this: if I was my daughter, I would have done everything that my mom did, but I probably would have stayed longer. I probably would have offered if possible. Maybe she couldn't. Like, who knows? I don't know. She lived in a different state. Like I said, he was born in California, had no family there. Don't leave so soon. Stay, offer support, find a support group, therapy. But again, maybe it was offered to me. I don't remember. Maybe it was offered to me and I declined it. Who knows? I was also stubborn at the time too. So I can't remember everything.
And I guess as somebody, I mean, listening to what you've been saying, what we could offer in that type of situation is to let mom talk about her son, to talk about the dreams that they're not going to get to live, to just sit there and hold your hand and say, oh, he would have been 30 today. I wonder what he would have been doing. Would he be married? Is he hanging out with his buddies? Is he watching the Super Bowl? Who's he rooting for today? How do you like that Bad Bunny show? I think that's what I'm hearing from you is you would have liked that opportunity to talk.
And I feel like my family knew. Like, I was kept in the dark because I remember telling my dad when he showed up for Joseph's birth, I was going to move back home, right? And I was like, I was hoping Joseph and I could have the downstairs. And he says, well, why don't we just see what happens? Like, I really feel like everybody else knew but me. Nobody told me anything. There was no preparation. So not only did you, and maybe and I could be totally off here. I'm just kind of piecing things together. But the doctor should have told me, like, I might be underage, but you should have still talked to me and told me instead of, I don't know. I felt like I was very excited and it was like snatched away from me. I was mad. I was so angry, guys. I cursed God. I was very angry. I was like, why would you do this to me? Why would you let me have this experience and feel this baby move and grow and kick? And because we know what it's like to carry a baby, right? You see him moving around. So I felt like I was given false hope or no hope. Like, I don't know. It was just some preparation would have been nice.
I'm so sorry that you have experienced this for so long by yourself, carrying a very heavy weight, but I'm glad that we're all here now today to be able to carry the weight with you because you're not alone.
I just think this is the first time I've ever told anybody the entire story. I don't even know if the father of my children knew. He was always very supportive. Every time Joseph's birthday came around, it was difficult. He was very supportive. So Lena and Paula, let's talk about your grandpa. Grandpa, grandfather, what are we calling him? Cosmo.
We always called him Grandpa Cosmo, yeah.
Cool name.
Yeah. It is a great name. And I have two boys, and I don't know why I didn't consider that name. And I also think about my dad's mom. I don't know why I didn't consider her name. Her name was Sylvia. And sometimes I look at my daughters and I'm like, gosh, you really would, that name would suit you.
Which one? The oldest or the youngest daughter?
The oldest.
Me too. I could see her as a Sylvia. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Grandpa Cosmo, Selena and I have a stepmom. We call her our smom. And so we lost our grandparents at a pretty young age. Our mom's dad passed away when my mom was 16. So you see, we never met him. And then her mom passed away, I think, when I was 6. So Carolina was about 2. So you probably have no memories of mom's
0.
mom. And then our paternal grandparents actually I think they lived with us or lived very near us for a short time in our youth. But then they moved back to Chile after a certain point in time. And so I think by the time I was probably 17 or 18 when Grandpa passed away. And I remember visiting my grandma, our dad's mom, when I visited Chile with my daughter, who was, I think, 2 years old at the time. So I was probably 22, 23. And that was the last time I saw my grandma. And then she died shortly thereafter. So then when my dad married our stepmom, our mom, her parents were still youngish. I think Grandma Betty was, I don't know, maybe in her 60s.
Yeah.
And Grandpa Cosmo was just a little bit older. I have his funeral card on my altar. So I knew that his anniversary. The anniversary of his death was coming up, and I don't know why, it just hit me this morning that Grandpa Cosmo and Joseph share this anniversary, Joseph's birthday and the anniversary of his passing, and Grandpa passing away 3 years ago. It just hit me this morning that there's, this cosmic tie in this circle of friendship, and there are probably others. And I think that is true, in close friendships, that we might come across another commonality like that. But I always remember.
How old was the grandpa when he died?
I have his funeral card right over there. I could go grab it and tell you exactly. Hold
80,
on.
let's say 81.
So he lived a long life.
Long life, yeah.
Wow.
I think 81. Let's see. You think he was he born in January? Or no,
That was Grandma
was born in
Betty.
January.
Well, he was too. He was born January 26th, 1934. And he passed away February 8th of 2022. So I'm 34.
80, 82.
78.
Is he the one who
78.
did he live in Chicago?
Mm-hmm. And he had a lot of little, I guess, colloquialisms, little phrases that were unique to him. And I just always remember, when he would say goodbye to you, he's like, well, I wish you good health and good luck.
Always.
Always.
We should steal that and put that on our page.
There were always, there were some other ones, but.
Have more babies.
Oh, yeah.
Have more babies.
Is that what he used to say?
Yes. He would talk about how that was like the one regret that he had was that him and Grandma didn't have more kids. And
how many did they have?
Just the two.
Just the two.
A son and a daughter.
Him and my youngest son were very, very close. Very, very close. And I think that's why his passing strikes me more than Grandma's, because Grandma, she was around, and yes, we would call her Grandma Betty, but I didn't have young kids at that time that, we just didn't get as close to her as far as my kids and myself. But Grandpa Cosmo, I knew how he liked his coffee, and my son today is actually always wears his coat on February 8th. He's wearing it today. It's really cute because it used to not be so big on him. And now, getting bigger and much, much taller. He's got big old feet. I had to buy new shoes again. And so the coat fits him really well now. And it's just like this little black, like windbreaker. It's super simple. It's cute.
He used to call him Superman.
He called him Superman. Yeah.
They called Grandpa Superman?
Or Grandpa Cosmo called Ari Superman.
I think at one point, Grandpa Cosmo and my dad and Tristan went on a helicopter ride.
They did.
Remember that over the Grand Canyon? And I remember, weren't they planning to do that? We're planning to do a
They were
helicopter
planning
ride.
to do that. Yeah. Yeah, he was a really special guy. I don't remember my grandparents a whole lot on my mom's side or my dad's side for obvious reasons, but he really fulfilled that role beautifully for me and for my kids.
I was going to mention something, but Savvy popped off. But Erin, did you want to say anything now that you're back with us? I think she might.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
There's a little bit of a delay.
Darn it, I think we lost her again.
What were you going to say, Shannon?
I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I know you had a very special relationship with your grandmother.
Oh, yeah. My grandmother was a pistol. I had a wonderful relationship with her. She died when she was 66 of bone cancer. Started out as breast cancer, but it spread to her bones. And so, she was a special lady with a fiery pistol, literally.
Kind of like Shannon.
Yeah, I miss her a lot and still think of her often. And so she died when I was 17 and I was in the group home at the time. And, they really helped minister to me when she passed away because I just was not doing so well. When she died, I fell apart, but they helped me get back on the mend and get myself back together. But it was a really hard loss for me, and it was my first loss, so it wasn't easy. I was her favorite. And everyone else who listens to this podcast and knows me can swear and lie and say and deny that wasn't true, but I really was her favorite.
I was my tata's favorite too. He called me Mulita.
Say it again.
Mulita. I was his stubborn mule. And that was my name. My tata was the first person to hold me when I was born. They were like, let me clean her off. Nope. He held me and I was his mulita. And when he passed away, it was really tough because I wasn't in a good financial situation at all. I didn't get to go to his services. I went to my grandmother's services. When my grandmother passed away, everybody was crying. She was 100 and a half years old. And I understand that she was crying, but all her kids outlived her. One, she had 5 children. And I don't know, but I put in my head that she's back with my tata. They met when she was in kindergarten. Like, they're back. They used to go dancing all the time. For me, it was joyous that she didn't have to experience those losses, right? Her grandkids, her children. And I was very happy for her and her passing because she lived a long life. Like, she almost made it to 101. She used to sneak me tortillas so back in the day, this generation complains and cries a lot. We'd get sent to bed with no dinner. Like, you want to act up? Okay. Well, I'm just going to starve your little butt then. Nana would come in with tortillas, warm, hot, fresh tortillas, and we're just like eating it in bed, like savoring it, sticking it at the top of the mouth so we can eat it later. Like, she was awesome. But when my grandfather passed away, she did change a bit. And I think also losing the father of my children, even though we weren't close, and that was a couple years ago, he had so much potential he was a good person at one point in time. Not to say he wasn't when he passed away, I just didn't know him. But that was another hard loss. And for my children, they don't have their dad anymore. And I don't have my mom. So I know what it's like to lose a parent. And especially when relationships are strained, it's so important to really live every day like it's your last, because you don't know when you're going to see that person again, or you may not. I feel like I'm very careful. I am so afraid that something's going to happen to me and I leave my children parentless. Thankfully, they have Katie's. Katie is what do I call her?
Hey,
My other baby mama.
just a little bit.
The
Sorry,
kids'
my
stepmom.
connections. Can you hear me
She's
now?
awesome.
Okay.
And I know she'll look out and be
I
there
just
for him.
wanted,
So
I
I do
missed
appreciate and
this,
love her
and
very
I'm
much.
sad I'll have to listen later, but I just, my
So
heart goes out to you,
Don't you call
Shannon, and I
them
think it's
their
so
bonus mom?
beautiful that you
yeah, it's her bonus mom.
celebrate
Monique has
Joseph's
her
birthday every
programmed in her
year.
phone, probably like
And since
mom
I've
number
known
2 or
you,
something. But
you
there's
always
never
bring it
been
up
this
every
jealousy or any kind of
February.
rivalry.
And we had a
She's just a
really cool
great woman.
conversation a
And
couple weeks ago
if their dad did
about all of
something
this,
right, it
and
was
I
marry
just
her and bring
how
her into our
beautiful
lives.
of an
So
experience,
truly blessed to have
although
her.
he didn't make it
And
fully,
like I said, I know
that you,
she'd be like, "Well, what do you guys
just your
need?" She still is in
perspective
contact
on
with
it,
Monique, and
and the fact that you still,
she also has another
celebrate him
sibling
every
of my
year and
kids.
hold him close. I
They have
love
a
that
sister
so
from her.
much. I can
Mm.
share actually, just my own experience. I lost a baby when I
So
was,
Aaron's back.
it would have been my third
You
child. I
having
had a
some problems,
miscarriage.
Aaron?
Um, and I can
We can
relate
hear
There,
to what you're
you.
you
saying
clear
about
now.
um, just feeling like people did
Yes.
not understand.
Yeah.
Like I had to just pick up and move on. It was like um, I had to get back to work. I remember my boss calling me and knowing what was going on, and 3 days later saying, "So when are you going to be back?" And just having to kind of just show up like it was normal everyday life, and it wasn't. It was such a loss. But I think for me, because it was a miscarriage and not a full term, people really didn't understand because they didn't have any kind of connection there at all. So for me, it was pretty painful, and I didn't realize how much I was hurting about that, until a little while after. And so now it really makes me think about how do we support moms in general, when they're pregnant, when they're after they've given birth. I think in communities years ago, women used to surround women so much better, and in such a, I'm not speaking well, but just
Dang it.
No.
Oh, goodness.
And just kind of piggyback on the conversation her and I had is there wasn't support. There's not support. There wasn't. I'm not going to say there isn't now, but the expectation is, right, when are you coming back to work? When are you going to be, when are you done doing whatever you need to do? We know you've lost a child, but you got to come back to work. And then if you're already a parent, you got to step back into your mom role. When do you find time to grieve? That's my question to parents out there who've lost their children. When do you have time to grieve when you still have to pay the bills? If you have other children, you still have to see to those other children. Your job is demanding your time, your patience. You have to come back as if nothing ever happened. that would be my question to people, because I was 17. I went back home. I got I worked at a restaurant, but I can't imagine having to run a family again. You just gotta, how does that work? And, how do you do that? Support groups, but support groups aren't there with you every day. When you have to do laundry and you have to take the kids to school and you have to take them to practice and you have to be at conferences, then you have to show up to work, then you have to be supportive to each other. A lot of couples lose their marriages because of the loss of a child. How are you supportive towards each other and to each other when you're both grieving?
Another day to that, it took me a minute to process, all of that. And I definitely felt rushed to just like kind of move through it and move on, by societal pressures, by work, everything else. But for me, I also had to realize it's really a thing that people just don't understand unless they've experienced it, and so I had to give grace there too, and let go of, a little bit of my pain in that, and realize that one way that I might be able to make that better for myself and my own experience and others is to give love to new moms and to be more supportive, because I think there was a time where women, would definitely surround a new mom and a new baby and bring meals over and spend time helping them, with their chores and, just helping them with anything that they need. But it was more than just a few days after the baby was born. And I would love to get back to that even more in just our culture, of just really thinking about like what it takes to get back on your feet, after a loss like that, or even after a new baby's born, because it's a big change in the family and something that should be celebrated and all of those good things. But families need a lot of support, especially the new mamas and the new babies. So that's kind of, I've been able to turn that into something positive for myself instead of not instead of, but turning that pain into something positive. Put it that way.
Well, does anybody have anything else they want to add?
No, I just want to thank both for sharing your story with us and giving us the opportunity to know what you went through at such a young age, and to Erin too for sharing a bit of her pain, and to remind us that grief is a real thing and it's not something that we can just expect that people can just get over it. I think we have to remember that grief is a personal journey, that it's going to take as long as it's going to take. And sometimes people just want to talk. They want to talk about their loved one. They want to talk about the few moments that you got to hold your son, or the dream that you had of that baby that didn't get a chance, or remember the dreams that we had with our grandparents that didn't get to come true because they had to leave us. And how do we hold those memories every day? Coming together like this gives us an opportunity to keep them around. A few months ago, it was just the three of us, Lena, Scoopalicious, and me, and we had this wonderful conversation around All Souls Day, Hallows Eve, Halloween. And we talked about remembering our dead, remembering the people who have passed before us, and the beautiful traditions that a lot of cultures have surrounding, remembering them, and how we hope that when it's our turn to take the next step into whatever lies ahead, those people will be there lighting the way, guiding us there. So that's how I like to think about it at the end of the day, or when I'm praying when I'm praying, or when I'm chanting, or when I'm remembering the people that have gone before us, is that I hope that they'll be there when this journey ends and the new one begins. What I encourage our listeners to remember is, if you know that someone had a loss, just offer to hear their story. No pressure.
Tell me more about them.
Yeah.
Tell me their story.
Tell me their story.
Haven't gained an angel today, but I would love to hear more about that person, because they're angels in heaven. They're a protection. They're our guidance. They're our light.
I appreciate you guys listening, and I appreciate you guys giving me the forum this evening to talk, and specifically on this day. And I truly appreciate you guys listening and just being there. And I think, gosh, if you guys were around 30 years ago, how amazing would that have been? Because I know that would have been like a revolving door. Paulo just left, here comes Savvy. Savvy just left, here come Lena and Minu and
To
Aaron.
be like, when are you guys leaving?
I just love this group of women. I just feel so blessed. So Well, if you guys don't have anything else to add, we'll go ahead and call it an evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and leave some comments. Again, what is it something you might want to hear us discuss and talk about? What would you like to throw out there? So everybody have a great Sunday. Happy Sunday, Sunday.
Happy Sunday, Sunday.